94.
I don't say it.
Still here.
No, I meant repeating the 94 portion.
I know, but I got you to do it like that.
Okay, so the topic. We're still.
I don't even know what the topic is.
What do you mean? I thought we decided the topic was going to be Dune.
Oh, I thought then you just said it doesn't have to be Dune. It could be something else.
So we just started talking about without any decisions on the topic.
Sure, Dune. Why not?
Okay. Oh, if not Dune, okay. How about this? I have been. I think Dune will come into this.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you making fun of me already?
It's my job.
Okay.
It pays well.
Okay, so I have been obviously struggling with immense amount of energetic processing over the last now 4 months. I'll just I can't keep track of how long it's been going, but I just time passes and I add another month onto it. So let's say it's been 4 months. And I'm finally getting used to the new energy, the new energy.
Yeah.
But as I'm settling into the new energy, I think what's happening is the density of everything is a lot lighter, right? And so everything feels lighter. Everything feels better, but at the same time, it's giving me the side effect of vertigo and nausea. I called it Vertigo Plus. This morning I realized that Vertigo Plus.
Vertigo Plus.
Vertigo Plus.
I think that would be the title.
Vertigo Plus. Yeah. And so I thought obviously the Vertigo Plus portion of things is more difficult, but everything else is less denser, right?
Yeah.
And so then I thought, perception of being or perception of reality has shifted to where I wouldn't say that I could say that I'm here a lot of the time. But if I'm not here, then I don't even know where I am. Why is this so funny?
No, I can see how it could tie into Dune. Go ahead.
Right. No, but I think that's why the Dune is calling, is because the reality has completely shifted to the point where not being here. Last night when I was going to bed, I think maybe it was upstairs when I was putting Annabelle to bed, or maybe downstairs. I don't remember. But I was laying there, and my notion of self completely disappeared. Probably more so than anytime before. Just I have left my space before. I have left the definition of me before, but it's usually from the top, and then I descend into the definition of I. Or personalized version of I, or this experiential version of I. But in this case, it was just gone. And I was just laying there, and I'm to begin with, you don't notice it. You don't notice what you're experiencing. And I was experiencing this generalized idea that I later, I snapped in and go, wait, what's happening to me? And I realized, oh, there's no me. There's just absolutely no me.
Huh.
And I'm laying there, and I'm I think it would be uncomfortable at some point to, right? I think if 2 or 3 years ago that happened to me, I would probably be concerned. But now I'm oh, wow, there's just this space where there's absolutely no me. And yet and so I'm laying there going, I know that somewhere I exist laying down in bed experiencing this, but it's so removed that over here, there's just nothing. No, I is not present.
Hmm.
So anyway, after all that, you can tell me how it relates to Dune.
I guess so. I read Dune, the Dune 1, I guess the book, and then I read Dune Messiah, the second book, out of, I don't know. There's at least 6 that Frank Herbert wrote, and then there's I don't know, 15 more or something that his son or other people wrote. And of course they made, there's the 1980 whatever Dune movie, and then there's the more recent Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2. But all those movies are just the Dune book.
The movies is the Dune book, and what is the show? Is that even the real Dune, or is it just something
the
else?
show I think is some other book that I haven't gotten to yet.
Oh, okay.
It might be. I don't know. I don't know which book it is. I do not know.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's like official canon or if it's just made up stuff. It seems to follow the canon, right? Because they reference all these events and they reference all this stuff that in the TV show that are in the books. And it's like, in Lord of the Rings, there's like, it's super detailed and it's like, oh, like, I don't know if Tolkien had to like have some sort of, crazy board set up with, everybody's like when they were born, when they died and all their paths and had to keep track of everything. It's like, it's that level of stuff that it's just the detail, the amount of stuff you would have to keep in mind to write these multiple stories that all take place in the same universe is a lot. So it all that TV show seems to follow in that. So I imagine it's from a book too. But so I guess spoiler alert. There's gonna be a lot of spoilers here if you haven't seen it or read it. But
I don't think we're going to be talking about Dune from the spoiler alert standpoint.
no, but I'm gonna say stuff that if you really cared about the book, this might not be the episode for you. The like the spice, of course, is central, and it is this substance only found on the planet of Arrakis, also called Dune, which gives people who take it special powers. And these special powers, include, to a degree, being able to have prescience and see into the future. And see into the future is super hand wavy. It's more like
just brushstroke it instead of getting into details of the Dune.
Like it, in as much as it can give you an experience outside of yourself. That's what it does. And several characters in the book do that. There you go.
Yeah. But that's the goal. My goal is not to discuss Dune as a book or a movie or a novel.
Yeah, I know.
And there's no need to get background.
Okay.
One, who cares? And two, there's this generalized archetypical, I know, I have my own thoughts about that, but idea of diving into reality that you see coming forth at you, that obviously Dune represents. Like, so Dune represents this reality that somebody sees or has seen or will be, or is potentiality thereof. But at the same time, it presents this archetypical, like, the arcs of energy that carry this larger communication into potentiality.
I in the afterward, I think I read that Frank Herbert spent a lot of time in Africa, and that helped influence it. The not just the fact that it's sandy, but like the whole colonizers coming over and displacing the natives, the exploitation of people and resources. He was really big into ecology as well. All those things, of course, are overarching themes. The whole seeing the futures, I always said it was really interesting to me because I can wrap my head around that. Lately, I've been having these. I told you last night. It's like, in as much as deja vu is like almost like something from the past, this is almost like something from the future. Is what it feels like. And I don't know how to describe it other than it's kind of like a deja vu, but it's like for something in the future. And I guess a regular deja vu kind of feels like, oh, I know this was going to happen. Then I know the next thing's going to happen. I know the next thing, almost like that. But this is more like in the more distant future somehow. I don't even know how to describe it. But there are people in the books that can see the futures. And it's like there's various futures. Like the future isn't written, but you can kind of like go, oh well, if I were to do this, then these futures fall off is no longer possible, and these futures get more likely. So it's this like calculus of trying to find the future that you want, and then kind of walk that narrow path to get there. Which right, because I can kind of relate to that. Not that I see the future, but like we've talked about it before. There are people who I think have like literally seen the future, and then, oh, I know that I need to, X is the future. Now, how do I get to X? What are my steps to do I have to build the company and make the rockets and whatever in order to get to Mars or something like that.
Right. Did you mean X as like vague representation, or actually X as a company?
Oh, I guess I meant X as just a vague representation, but I guess it could be the company too.
You just literally described the company. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
there's that.
There's that. No, I just meant whatever it is that you see in the future. But yeah, this idea of like pulling the future toward you, or pulling, I don't know, or pushing yourself to the future. I almost see it as pulling the future toward you. It's like you see the you could call it the goal, you could call it the inevitability or whatever, and you almost have to reverse engineer what that must be. Like, oh well, I see a future where there's a big population on Mars. Okay, well, in order to have that, we have to have people there. In order to have that, we have to have materials there. In order to have that, we have to have rockets. In order to have that, we have to have simpler rockets. In order to have, and it's, probably more detailed than that. But trying, this crafting your future that you see. I call it pulling your future to you. I don't know why I call it that, but I do. But that stood out as kind of an interesting thing in the book.
You're right. Like my dream had a future, right? And I say a dream, but it was a vision, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it has a future, and it's a very archetypical future, right? Because somebody else wrote about it already, right? And so I say somebody else. Plato has wrote about it already, right?
Of all people.
Right. So when I'm having my vision, I'm quite literally have a slightly altered version of Plato's cave allegory, right? And it in some way, right, I don't want that future, right? Like, because, right, in that case, I'm seeing a future possibility of a future outcome that I don't want. And so my reverse engineering, I guess, or pulling the future to you is trying not to pull
to avoid that.
To avoid the future. And so doing actions, in my case, that are well, how about this? There's two parts. There's the outcome in which I was serving, and then there was the fact that I was serving, right? And so I couldn't get touch of the outcome, right? Or like the immediate perceived outcome, right? But then the part that I was serving, I'm like, well, no, that is a skill set that obviously I will need to have. If this future does come into fruition, then yes, I need to have the skill set. But it would not hurt to have the skill set if this future does not come into fruition, right? And so in that case, I'm not pulling some. I'm building myself towards the person that I already saw, because I was a different being in that situation that I was when I had the dream in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so as far as the path goes, in that case, I am building a version of myself that I already saw existing, that I couldn't connect with or I couldn't identify in that time. So that's kind of like, I guess, pulling the future.
I mean, honestly, that's closer to how it is in the book. The vision that Paul Atreides keeps having is this jihad in his name. So he sees a whole lot of futures where he ends up being like emperor of the universe, and all of it, and he has a fanatical religious style following that go out and commit jihad in his name, basically killing off people who will not, convert and see Paul as the one true Messiah. And so he's like, I have to prevent this at all costs. And he's like, there's scenes in the first book where he's like, somebody sneezing could literally change the future and stuff. So he's like almost paralyzed by that prescience of like, what do I do to avoid this? Because so many of the paths lead to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So then the second half of my Plato's exploration is the future that I don't want. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the future that I don't want is not because it's hurting me in any way, but the humanity as a whole is basically, I get, those familiar with Plato's Scala ever go, you know what humanity is. But trapped, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trapped and not able to basically have a life. And so in this situation, if you see a future that in the potentiality you want to avoid, right? There seems to be this generalized thought that we need to follow, like, I don't know, you can define what Dune does with it, right? But like in that form of physicality, have to keep track of all the events and all the perceptions thereof and all the nuances and all the what's the word? Not aesthetics, but like
Variables?
Variables, yeah, but how it's seen to other people, like
Optics?
Optics, yeah. The optics have to be controlled in such detailed way that you're trying to walk this narrow path to a specific outcome. Then in the long run, it's not negative, right? If you saw the future and the future was not great, trying to avoid it, then the optics matter a lot, right?
Ooh, elaborate on that. How other people see your actions matters?
Well, so you elaborate on the word optics or how I'm interpreting optics. Yeah, like you give an example, like if he sneezes, the optics of the sneeze, right?
If anybody sneezes, how he worded it.
Yeah, sure, but it is the optics, right? So
how things are perceived?
How things are perceived. Like, oh, I have, so, right, there's the obvious path of, oh, you know what, I'm pissed off and I go off and on some platform, I say some negative shit about somebody else, right? And then my jihad squad murders that somebody else because I have communicated, perceived.
Jihad squad.
Sure. I've communicated some ill intent towards that person.
Sure.
Right. That is the most blatant unaccountability for personal responsibility.
Okay.
Right.
You have
so in that case,
especially if you have a following.
Right. But
especially
Atreides, right?
Sure, he does.
Like cult-like following, right?
Yeah.
So the optics there, in this case, very much carry a responsibility of, if I speak ill intent towards someone, my militant jihad will basically take action. And so therefore there's responsibility in the word spoken, right? So that's one. But the optics is more than just the word spoken. The optics is also body language.
Yeah.
And a side eye or a smile or a frown or crossed arms or, on not reaction or smirk or a short response or a too long of a response. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
The optics stretch on the entire scale of truth.
Yeah.
Right. That are so nuanced that I would say are impossible to control and then therefore actually derive the outcome that you're searching for.
Yeah.
If the path is so narrow.
And not only that, it like in the book, there's one part where like some bad guys come in and the good guys end up the the Freemen end up killing them, but Paul wasn't involved. And Paul's like, it's going to be written down that I personally slayed all these people with my hand. There were 5 of them, right? He's like, it's going to be remembered that I personally killed all 20 of them myself. Just knowing that anything related to him will always just be blown out of proportion. And even if he's like, it doesn't matter if I live or die in this battle. If I die, I'll be a martyr. If I win, I'll be this, invincible, victorious person. I can't escape this jihad. It's like, no matter what, if I were to kill myself, it would still be like, oh, there's a deeper reason behind it, and we must, avenge it. There was no escaping it.
Okay, yeah. So there, quite literally, in the form of interpretation that is the Plato's cave and its material, right? Or even like larger over scope of philosophical interpretation of life, there's probably absolutely nothing you can do to gear yourself towards or away from, considering the amount of nuances or the amount of optics that go into that path, right?
Like your destiny.
I mean, I don't believe in destiny. I believe in the essence of self, but I don't believe in like, oh, you're destined to be a martyr. I don't think that's the case. I think there's the essence of self. So anyway, and I have had multiple dreams since then, or multiple, I would say, call them dreams, but they were in a dream state, but there were visions where there were other outfalls of this Plato's cave allegory of like how we got there and what we're fighting and what the nuances are, right? And every single time I have that dream, but not the Plato cave allegory, that was like the slap in the face, and then like, okay, go figure it out, right? So every single since then, basically the underlying tone is things, right? And my understanding becomes larger and larger of this. We cannot address things from the level of 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional physicality, materialism, material interpretation of things, to where if we are driving outcomes, or if we are driving perceptions, right? The perception and the outcome is going in the very specific path. You cannot be chugging forward, pulling the future towards you, because you are existing in this state, right? In the now. And the now is flawed. And then thus the future that you're seeing from the now is a reflectory nature of the flawed state of being that we are in today. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure it does.
Okay, so
I got confused.
Right now, right, in every morning, in every frame, we have countless of possibility of where we're seeing, where we can go. We could see all the possible outcome of humanity, right?
Ourselves or humanity?
I mean, I'm talking about like over arc of humanity here,
okay.
But ourselves,
whatever on the microcosm.
It's
ourselves,
the same thing.
But,
it's the same thing,
yeah.
Right? Like your household life is quite literally a reflection of your perception of the life of the nation and the life of the earth and the life of Galactic Federation or whatever, right? So you will see your truth in the reality, but your truth is reflective of the state that you're in right now, right? And so if you have versions of the future that you are seeing, right, and you're seeing all these possibilities, in that case, if you don't have enough power, like that's the caveat, if you don't have enough power to see things for what they are, right? And so I'll just sideline that for a second. And I'll just say here, if you're seeing the future and if you're seeing the outcome, you have to see the multiple interpretations of that outcome, right? Like I'm assuming in that book, there's multiple interpretation of what reality for Atreides could be, or the like the fate of his nation, or the fate of his people, or the fate of the universe or galaxy, or whatever, right? And so when you see that, you have to then recognize that what drives the future is your intent in the moment, right? Your intent. And your intent in the moment comes out of your current state of interpretation, which is all energy. Like what's driving you forward is energy.
Yeah.
Current state of interpretation is energy.
Right. No, I mean, that's a really easy way to sum up kind of how I try to live is, what is my intent in the moment?
Yeah. Right. But if somebody's raging jihad on the behalf of somebody else, I would say their intent in the moment is not coming out of a holy space of love and light.
I mean, right. Ironically, they would be the first to say that it is, but no, I don't think it is.
Yeah. So the question,
they're
I guess,
clearly misguided.
So the question is there something in the Dune franchise that ascends dimensionality, ascends time and space, sees the overruling wholeness in all aspects of reality, and has this knowing of the undertone that things will work its way towards light if the light is the intent of the bringer? Is there anything at all of that?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
There you go. I watched the movie, so I don't know about the book. But the mother's role as the witch, right? What is their goal? Those witches, what is their goal?
They're like the quote Reverend Mother of the tribe or of the Fremen people.
And so what is their goal, like in the long run, as far as interpretation of reality?
It is kind of like, to offer guidance, to offer, help and healing and stuff like that.
But like help and healing comes in at like individual battle by battle, interaction by interaction basis. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, there's guidance. I'm sure there's individual guidance, but it's more like, higher level, as a people's guidance. I know what you're asking, but I don't.
So the Dune franchise does not have this in it. It does not have this energetic overlay.
There is an energetic overlay, but I'm trying to think of something that I could say, oh, that's it. There's right. So
from right, this also goes back to Daniel's discussions.
Schmachtenberger?
Yeah, his discussions as well, right? What if we know all the possible outcome of not? How do we reach the outcome of desired is, right?
Right. His little very thin bowling alley we have to bowl right down in order to.
Yeah, this is the exact same thing. His slew of discussions basically Dune, right?
Yeah.
There's these whole nuances and all these optics and everything that is basically spiraling. It feels like spiraling out of control, right?
Yeah.
But was it Einstein? I think we have said that in the podcast. So we're talking about him, is that you can only solve the problem. You cannot solve the problem at the level that you created it.
At the level of consciousness that created it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so when someone's raging jihad on behalf of the world savior, right?
Mm-hmm.
The jihad is being raged out of the level of consciousness, out of the perception of reality that currently exists, that us as a cumulative self are choosing to propagate out. Right?
Right.
And so to then reach love or peace or exploration of life that is further than the rage of jihad, right? If the goal is not to rage the jihad, right? To some form, of course, there's this expression of self, regardless of what it is, that is still love, even the expression of jihad. There's that.
Yeah.
But to reach a desired outcome that is different than what we're aiming for right now has to have an influxed amount of energy, which is something that I always get frustrated with you of. That is different than the current status quo that we're experiencing right now.
Yeah.
The energy has to be upcycled.
Yeah. Well, they don't avoid the jihad. So it's not great. in the book. And I still don't completely understand why that was necessary. Why, as Emperor of the Universe, he couldn't have stopped it. He doesn't want it. It's very clear that this is not what he wants, and it seems like he does. He tries to stop it, but he's unable to.
I mean, some notions of change, right? Actually, most of the notions of change within themselves carry this rattled up in the air, right? When you shake the particle bucket and all the particles in the air, right? And they're just kind of in this suspended state, and then they look chaotic because they're in suspended state. And then each moment, basically, we, through our intent, right? Vibratory intent, choose which particle, basically how these particles settle, right? Like there's this settlement of reality that comes out of our intent, right? But I guess maybe this is why I feel like up in the air and I don't exist and everything is just kind of like this in the state of suspended particle interpretation. We are here to experience our reality, right? And our reality is driven from our vibratory state of being, right? And a vibratory state of being is super potent, right? So maybe this is Dune aside if the Dune doesn't go there. But as a responsible party, right, then we have to take full responsibility to realize that the outcome of our probability is completely dependent on the vibratory state of our choosing. And to neglect that thought or that idea that we are not fully responsible for what we see in the world.
I mean, in the book, I think he feels responsible for it.
Yeah, but then what is the action taken? Right, that's the thing, is they're responsible.
My understanding is that there is no action that can be done to avoid it. It becomes inevitable. There's literally nothing he could do to stop it. He can see all possible. It gets to a point he can see all possible futures, every possible future. He lives, he dies, he kills someone, he jumps off a cliff, he renounces his emperorship, he goes in exile. Doesn't matter. The jihad rages on.
Meaning, like,
it is
annihilation of species. What are we talking about here?
The jihad is his radicalized followers going out and spreading the good word and killing people who will not convert.
Foundation style? Christianity style?
Christianity style.
By foundation style.
More like the Crusades. Are the Crusades.
It's the Crusades.
Right. It's the Crusades.
This was written in the 60s.
Yeah.
So post-Crusades. Yeah.
The Crusades were in the
I know
1100s.
I know right, but well, what I'm saying is energetically, this is a repeated cycle of potentiality at all times, where a messiah or a leader or something comes along. I don't know what his message is. I don't know if it's love and light, but right, like Jesus style message of love and light, right? Tolkien style, like, right, the message of love, and is then.
I mean, it seemed like he wanted the best for his people. His people being the Fremen that he kind of adopted him on the planet, right? The natives of Dune, who were, this is not described in the book, but in the epilogue or whatever, they were like religious exiles of centuries, thousands of years before. They're not even quite sure where they came from because it's lost to history. And they've been kicked from planet to planet to planet to planet. And they finally landed on Dune, and nobody wanted to live on Dune because it's a desert planet. And they've been there for however many thousands of years, living in the caves and whatever, and adapting to the environment. So they're already this disenfranchised group of people that has this, charismatic leader who has been prophesized before. Right? That's also in there, is that the Bene Gesserit people in hundreds, thousands of years ago came to Arrakis and talked about in the future, there will be a boy and he will be born to someone, da, 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 da. And he happens to fit these, qualities. And so he is literally the one that has been prophesized. He is the Messiah. So he's this larger than life character, partially on his own account because he is incredibly talented and has these qualities in himself, and partially because of the stuff that's gone on in the past. So the combination of both of them make him this, godlike person that, I guess if you believe that this person is literally a Messiah, like literally, then I can wrap my head around, you're going to do everything you can to make sure that everybody knows it. I don't agree with that, but I can understand that, I guess. Everybody in the universe. We're going to go from planet to planet and clean house. We're going to go annihilate other religions that teach anything differently. That type of stuff.
Messiah bringing what, though?
Well, he brought freedom and salvation to his people on Arrakis.
Then do the people of Arrakis go out and rage jihad in order to convert all the other planets to...
That is my understanding.
His religion?
Religion, but yes. Yeah, I don't know if the religion's the right word, but yeah.
But then what is he standing for? Like, what is he teaching? What does it mean to them?
He gains emperorship in a way that is questionable, right? At the end of the movie, Dune Part 2, you see it where he strong arms the emperor into basically, I'm going to marry your daughter. I'm going to be the new emperor. You give up all of your, holdings and whatever. I'm the new emperor. And I've got everybody hostage, and I've got the whole planet kind of hostage because I could destroy the spice. And if I destroy the spice, no more space travel. There's billions of people who are addicted to it, and they will die if they don't keep using it. It's like highly addictive. Like everybody on the planet is addicted to it just from breathing it all the time. If it's not there, like lots of people will just die. But he's like, I will do it. That's his he's got his self-destruct thing, and the other people who are with him who can see the future themselves know, oh shit, he will do it. We do not have a choice in this. We have to surrender to him. And so he ascends to the throne in a way that is, suspect.
Is the emperor of all...
The emperor of the universe, basically. He becomes emperor of the universe at the end.
So then people raging jihad on his behalf, raging jihad for what? What is the cause?
I am so unclear. It's not explained. It's not explained in the first two books. Why? Or if it is, it went right over me.
I mean, I understand the book has very material interpretation of reality in the sense that, them fighting usually results in survival. Like, I have to fight because I want to survive. People are invading our base, I have to fight. People invading our planet, I have to fight.
That's all book one. Book one is stopping the people trying to invade, trying to suppress the people of Arrakis, trying, enslave the people of Arrakis, whatever. That's book one. Check. Done. And he ends up emperor of the universe.
Yeah. But then after that, it almost seems like...
Book two starts 12 years later. The jihad is in full force. And it just kind of starts there. I'm like, wait, what? Where did the...
Yeah, but then
why?
Is the thought then that after you have accumulated this power, do you remember the lifetime where I remember being Mongolian or Japanese general, and I'm holding a very large section of land, right? And the goal is not to wage war, right? But the goal is to protect the people within the people that I care about, the people within my control region. This is not multiplanetary, right? So this is regional to, let's say Japan, right? Right. But the surrounding tribes are threatening our well-being. So in that case, it was very calculated in that situation is, in order for me to keep my people safe on my land, I have to actually go out and attack to prevent more people attacking me. So the attack was not there.
It might be actually
to colonize or to spread my way of being. The attack is there to preserve my way. But strategically, the way to do that was to go and attack out.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It might be some of that too. I mean, I don't know. It's never described as defense. It's always jihad, which, has its own connotation to it.
Yeah. But like, right, jihad, like through words of, like, through thoughts of Christianity, right?
I mean, jihad in the book is described as like a holy war.
Yeah, but it's our way is superior and better than your way, which is what.
I mean, I don't even know that superior and better. I think it's more like our way is the one and only right way.
But that's just convolutive saying that they believe that they're superior.
Yeah,
than
it's
the inferior.
It's more emphatic. This is where I'm going with that. It's not my way is better because I do it this way and you do it that way. It's my way is the one and only correct way, and anybody who does it any other way is wrong to the point where if you don't convert, I'm going to kill you.
I mean, but that's just like all world's religions waging war against each other. If there was ever a religious conflict, it's just because of that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not morally anything. It's you find superiority in your state.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's ego, right? So what I'm saying is the rage of conversion, right, stands on the need to preserve your status quo and your way of being, because your way of being somehow makes you feel safer than the alternative, right? And so, like, in the sense, when I was this general, right, it was interesting, right? Because I cannot experience this in this form. And so it's interesting to like tune into a different form of me. There was this intense peace and serenity within his vibratory field. Like, there was no rage, anger, superiority, anything at all in the way, like, right, to where if I was on the outside looking out and I saw him, well, now that I can read energy, that it would be different. Like, if I just saw his actions presented out, I would say that, oh, like, if somebody's raging war, if somebody's advancing conflict, eating up land, and then not necessarily devastating the people that he takes over, but takes over. Like, somebody's taking over land and then claiming it to be under their rule or their kingdom, or whatever Japanese word for that would be, territory, right? I would say that person is unbalanced or is ego driven or unhinged.
Sure.
There's all of these warlike terms that go in that I would label that human being as.
Right.
But energetically, as this general and the emperor of the region, none of that existed in that frequency. It was the most balanced approach to life, and everything was seen through the lens of, how do I propagate peace even though I engage in war? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
How do I propagate peace and calmness and actually well-being for everyone, including my people in my region, and then basically every region that I take over. But it was through war.
Yeah. I mean, we watched I'm sure there was artistic license, but we watched that documentary about Alexander the Great, and he went from place to place on his military campaign, and sometimes, depending on who it was, he killed a lot of people, and sometimes he was welcomed in as a savior, literally crowned pharaoh in.
We should just have an episode on Alexander the Great.
Yes.
I mean, considering I had my vision.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I have the vision that is different than what is documented history, and based on the interpretation of documented history, my vision pipes into like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's uncanny.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I would be super excited to record that episode.
Okay. Yeah.
But no, right? But there's
yeah.
Right. There's leadership.
His goal is not to kill people. That is not his goal. His goal is to, I guess in this case, stop a perceived evil. In that.
Yeah. So is jihad in Dune's interpretation also that or not?
See, Paul doesn't seem to be in control of it.
Oh, he's out of control.
It's done in his name, and he laments that fact.
Why not then be in control of it?
I don't know, other than it was inevitable. Out of every future he sees, he cannot see a future where it doesn't happen. There's nothing he can do to stop it. I mean, he's like, at one point in book 2, he's talking to someone. He's like, this is some of the history of Earth. Like, they're not on Earth, right? No, in fact, I think Earth is long gone at this point. I don't know why, but I think it's gone. There was some war that destroyed it or something. And he mentioned Genghis Khan, who killed, however many million people. And the guy's like, oh wow, he must have had, some fancy weapons to kill, let's say 3 million people. Genghis Khan, I don't know. And he's like, no, he didn't personally kill them. His legions did it in his name.
Yeah.
And then he goes, and here's Hitler, who did, I don't know, 10 million or whatever. And again, he didn't personally kill the people. His legions did it in his name. And he's like, I've got best estimates are 61 billion people under who were killed in my name.
Yeah.
And he does not feel good about this at all. But he's hoping to teach someone, like, by going back to like olden days, and the olden days are, I guess tens of thousands of years ago. Maybe there could be lessons learned as to how to stop it or something. He wants to stop it. He's not happy about it. But he feels powerless too.
Right. So, I mean, going back to Hitler. But right, I spoke with Aiden about this the other day, and right when we were talking about Hitler, right, this is in no way like supporting Hitler's actions at all whatsoever, right? me being a Ukrainian Jew, obviously.
In case there's any doubt,
right? Just so this is not in support of Hitler's action, like both my Ukrainian side of the family suffered and my Jewish side of the family suffered. So not pro Hitler actions. But the reason why he was able to have the reach that he has, right, is because energetically, right, he had enough alignment within his personal frequency to where, through the truth of that alignment, and this is I don't know, that you can see how this relates to Dune, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe that's the issue here, is that Dune does not present. I'm hoping at some point, just like the reason why you and I were so obsessed and maybe troubled by Daniel's theories is because at no point did he present a solution to an inevitable outcome.
Yeah.
And the reason why, I did not read the Dune, but the reason why I'm so troubled about my visions is like my vision just showed it as is, and then other visions showed it as is, and like it wasn't great. And then I myself have to start rolling around going, what is the historical propagation of like-minded frequency that causes us to experience a cyclical nature that has the same outcome?
Right.
And then what this discussion is, I guess, if this is coming through or not, and then what outcome is the Einstein's code, right? Is you cannot solve the solution or solve the problem, whatever that code is that I keep on miscoding. But the intent that generates action, that generates outcome, comes from a state of being, right? And if the state, there's a lot of power in being in truth with your state of being, like.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the conversation that I was having with Aiden that I don't know if he got or not, but the reason why his actions were so potent and so far reaching, because he was not denying his state of being. And his state of being was a state of suppression and hatred and whatever else he felt. I don't know. But I know it's suppression and hatred, right?
Hitler?
Yeah. But it is the truth in his state of being. And so the power that he draws is out of the truth of that state.
Right. We might call that a negative state, but...
Yeah, right. It is not a state desired
right.
by me, and then thus the outcome coming out of that state is not desired by me.
But he's in alignment with it.
He's in alignment.
Now you could have a positive state and be in alignment with that and maybe achieve some good things.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, yeah.
Anytime a human being reaches an unbelievable amount of outcome.
Yeah.
Inevitably, it's coming out of the state of true alignment with self, be it positive or negative. So Hitler is our ultimate token story for how it looks to be in alignment and amass enormous amount of power over a very short amount of time and have far reaches, like unbelievable reaches, right? Like right now, I don't want to say negative things, but like right now people are talking about like how far something can reach, right? And that reach is extremely powerful if you're in alignment with your truth, if you're admitting to your truth and you're aligned with it completely, and you can find resonance of that alignment within others, and cumulatively you spread that alignment and then basically like atomically, exponentially expand that power, right? Like, I know this is interesting. I think this is like... this is actually very interesting. But what ended World War II, right, was 2 huge atomic explosions.
Yeah. So
2 huge spill out of energies that had an intent behind it. Think about that, right? It's a physical interpretation of something that we do not want. But the energy of the atomic explosion and the intent of what it was designed for was to stop the war had to be greater than the cumulative energy of morphic consciousness of the Nazi propagation of intent of war and hatred.
Yeah.
Do you see what my point is?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not pro nuclear weapons at all, but energetically, in order to shift a status quo, you have to insert a larger amount of energy to offset the current
and that's
set of energies.
That's a lot of energy.
The energy. This is interesting. The energy we did not have, right? The energy we didn't have until we did not have a solution how to end the war, because the amount of energy that was taking place, this relates to Dune, the amount of jihad that is taking place is raging out of this inertia, immense amount of inertia that is coming out of place of inception that in this case might be predating Atreides' placement into that role. Right? You're saying like, oh, he came into the role and they were already prepared and armed and mentally raging jihad on the fact that they were a suppressed race. And he was seen as Messiah to save them, but then saving because of the suppression. The jihad is raising out of the initial inception of their culture.
Right. They were a powder keg ready to go off.
Yeah.
And had been because that's the place where the spice is. So that's arguably the most valuable planet in the universe. That's that's oil, that's what oil was in the 60s and maybe still is to a degree today. That's the parallel that he wanted to make, right?
To oil?
To oil, right. Here's a desert land with a valuable resource on it that, that the colonizers are coming over and exploiting the people to basically steal for money. Am I talking about spice or am I talking about oil? Talking about the same thing. That's the parallel.
Yeah, but cyclically, right? Either through fictional stories of Dune or fictional stories of Tolkien, right? Or fictional stories of what's his name? C.S. Lewis, right? It's the same fictional narrative that has this overarching story of what it means to have an inertia, right? Behind an idea.
Yeah.
And then that idea overrides all intent and becomes basically this unstoppable force, because the initial inception of that inertia comes out of a place of, in Hitler's case, hatred, right, and suppression.
Right. And the inertia works both ways. The inertia of whatever the status quo is hard to change because of the stationary inertia of the system not wanting to move. And there's also an inertia of like a group of suppressed people who are like, we just can't take it anymore, who want to fight against it.
Well, Nazis were that. He riled people up and captured the energy of, I can't take it anymore.
Right.
I don't have food.
Right.
And because
after World War I, Germany was kind of I guess economically punished, suppressed.
I don't know, but
I think that's part of it.
But through history, what I heard is the reason why he was able to rile up that much support and build up that much inertia, and energetic inertia, was because he captured the people's hearts, which is hearts and minds. Which is, what do you do to build inertia? Is you tap into the source of the power, and the source of the power is, guess what? I feel very passionate about being suppressed.
We're going to make Germany great again.
I wouldn't say that. We wouldn't be able to monetize this.
But yeah, I mean, in as much as, yes, Hitler was a terrible person who was a power-hungry psychopath, but he probably, I assume, did want the best for his people being the Aryan race or whatever. But, the people who can get behind that message sure got behind that message.
He wouldn't have been able to do what he did if he was a power-hungry psychopath, if he did not find resonance in his message within everybody else.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So
there was, everyone else being those people, the Aryan people who, I imagine the Jews did not get behind it and go, hey, this sounds good. Whatever, his constituency that supported him are the people that, were his people. They're the ones that supported him. Not, what am I trying to say? he wasn't speaking to every person living inside of Germany. He's speaking to, I'm assuming, a vast majority of them.
Yeah, but no, but that's actually worse.
Riling them and getting them all
That's
worked
actually worse because there are countries who were not in the same position as Germany, right? Who did not feel suppressed the same way as the Austrians and the Germans did, right? But could resonate with the generalized message of not having power.
Like Italy and Japan?
But there's no way that as he's marching through basically entire Western and Eastern Europe, that there are people who go, you know what? No, I'm going to join this Nazi cause because I feel the exact same way.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? You don't have to be
Aryan.
You don't even have to be not Jewish. I'm not saying Jewish people join them. It's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying. There you go. My grandma, right, when she was telling me about her terrible war stories and all the PTSD I have from all the German slang, she had a sister-in-law who she did not like for multiple reasons. But one of the reasons she highlighted to me that she doesn't like her is because during World War II, when her house was occupied by the Germans, they welcomed them in, and they actually wanted the Germans to take over Ukraine because they thought their life would be better under Nazi Germany.
Right? If your choice is Nazi Germany or Soviet Union at that point.
Right. Yeah. Right. So in that case, the residents of that particular family were, and she marked her as like simple village person because they were from a village and life. Right. But the reason why that family felt the way they did is because however their life were in that village was so suppressed and marginalized, and they did not feel like they had power under Soviet Union, that Nazi marching in and killing thousands of people, granted, they were not they were not in harm's way because they were not Jews.
Those people instead of my people, then that's
But that's the thing, is that's why Grandma disliked her so much, partially, is because her simple mind only fixated on the idea of, I feel marginalized, and look, I think I can gain some things from being part of this Nazi movement while I'm Ukrainian and while the country is being devastated, and I'm putting judgment here, and while like this other half of my family, pre my existence, is being exterminated, she, and this was before Mom even married a Jew. Do you see what I mean? So like,
well, there's a lot there. I don't know if it was before the war or after the war, but I think I read that, like under Stalin's rule, Ukraine had many years of like famine, where food and resources may have existed, but they were almost taken from because a lot of food was grown in Ukraine, but it was grown in Ukraine and then shipped out to the rest of the Soviet Union, and not didn't even feed the people who were there.
Well, side note, they took the farmers' land and they privatized it, or it's not even privatized it. It's annexed it to the government, and now the farmer did not have the land, and the land that the farmer used to have were now being worked for the purpose of the government, and all the food was being taken away off of that land.
Yeah.
So imagine, imagine how much hatred and disempowerment that would bring in as a farmer, and her growing up on the farm.
No, I'm sure there were people who life was better under Nazi rule than it was under whatever was before, whether that's Soviets or whether that's whatever.
And Stalin, of course, killed thousands of people.
Those people, that situation existed, where individually your life may be better under the Nazis than whatever comes before.
Yeah.
As a whole, is society better? No.
But you see, inceptually, right? Inceptually, we can talk about nuance of like this political idea, that political idea,
right,
or any
I
of
guess
that.
what I'm saying is there are reasons why, even though comes this terrible force, you might welcome that because personally that's better than whatever's before.
The status quo.
Than the status quo, or when you've got to, do I want the Nazis or do I want the Soviets? Well, I guess I know how it is here now under the Soviets, so can't really get much worse. Come on in. Nazis.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, I'm not saying she was not justified and she did not have her own personal reasons.
Everybody's got their reasons.
Just my grandma at the rudimentary level judged her.
That's a hard
that
thing to accept.
Yeah.
Right?
And you see, but at the same time, my grandma compares her standing with the Nazis after her house was occupied and she was raped and abused by the Nazis.
Sure.
So you get
a slightly less bad group of Nazis in there who aren't, raping people. Maybe that isn't as bad of an occupation, I guess.
Yeah, but right. So she's judging what she interprets Nazi as from the traumatic experience of rape and servitude for like 2 years while they studied there.
Right.
Versus what she's judging is a completely different scenario. Right. Do you know what I mean?
And I don't know if the soldiers come in and someone's welcoming, maybe they're nicer to them than if someone comes in and they begrudgingly let you stay there too. Well, I don't know.
I can't even comprehend Nazis marching.
I can't even comprehend, having people just come in and just armed people just come in and we're going to stay at your house now. I'm not going to say thanks because I don't even need to because it's mine now. Make me a sandwich.
Yeah, that's what it was.
It's bonkers.
Well, no, and they kill all the men along the way, right? Right. Yeah, so, like in my grandma's case, her brother, I think I've said this on a podcast before, but her brother's, is hiding in like a cellar that they have bricked up to make it seem like it's not a cellar. And so the Nazis, and he was in like however long the Nazis occupied. I know it was over a year, but if not closer to 2.
That's wild to be.
So him and his friend are in the cellar, and they have to sneak food in there every so often. In order, and the Nazis did not know. Like the Nazis, the front got pushed, and once Sumi got liberated, like the brothers and his friends survived. Like, and I knew this uncle or the grand uncle, right? Like that's just right. So the circumstances of Nazi experience,
living underground for a year is wild. I mean, that's awful.
While your mother and your sister are being raped upstairs by the Nazis. So I'm not sure what that does to you. I think becoming an alcoholic, because
best case, you're an alcoholic.
Well, that's what he was. He died as an alcoholic, right? He drank himself to death after that. Right. So yeah, a lot of side notes here. But the story, the arc of the story, what it means for us to go into a militant conflict, right? And rage conflict under the circumstances of our status quo. It completely comes out of the status quo of interpretation, right? Tying all of this together, right? But the message, maybe this is the important part to switch over to, that maybe I don't think that Dune does. And maybe this communicates why not Hitler was successful, and this communicates why Genghis Khan was successful, and I don't know if Stalin was successful. I'm assuming it's somehow related to this, but I know as a Japanese general, I was successful, right? But it was under completely different circumstances than. Well, no, it's the same energetic interpretation, but it's the opposite energy. The inserted frequency of action, even if it's military action, right, is inserted out of place of peace and happiness and well-being. And so the action that you insert into your intended outcome comes out of higher vibratory frequency than.
If you're in alignment with yourself, you can achieve greatness. Now, maybe that's good great, or maybe that's bad great. Is that what you're trying to say? So
yeah, but this is, I'm saying this and I'm realizing this, and this is showcasing the difficulty behind the task. Okay, so if Hitler starts the war out of disenfranchised thought of self, and he's in true alignment with that idea, right? He truly believes that he is in a disenfranchised position and his people are suppressed and life can be better, right? You're starting the war from lesser than, and you're motivating everyone else around you energetically. You're sinking them in, right? Like through this incredible power of intent. Everybody's synced in with the lesser than. And the momentum is from that, right? So that incredible amount of not so great stuff came out of a very powerful momentum of disenfranchised lesser than.
Right.
Right. And so however many people dead, whatever the devastation that the world still feels from that cumulative energy stems out of that inception, that initial inception of intent. And then if I had to go, the only example I know of this is the example of my past life. When I had the inception of why are we starting this military action? Why are we basically going out of our own territory and then spreading itself out into and basically expanding our territory? The inception of that action was not we're disenfranchised, not we are suffering, but we are in vibratory state of peace and love. And in order to, one, keep that peace and love, but then two, basically remain in the status quo of this peace and love, right? And then two, expand the borders of that peace and love, because otherwise disenfranchise something else will come in and invade the borders.
Almost, it's offense, but defensively.
Yeah, offense. Yeah,
it's preemptive offense in order to.
Well, no, they were already coming in.
Okay.
So that they were already infringing on the borders. So to begin with, it was like, oh no, we have to defend this border, this perimeter of love and light.
But then it's like, screw that. We push back even harder.
Well, it's not screw that. If we don't push back, they will continue to infringe.
Okay. So by pushing back, it pushes the conflict border out further, or it kills off the people who are
the people will continue to invade, right? And take, right, the goal of the goal is to take over us, right? But the goal of us is not to engage in war or to right, but to preserve the status quo of light in that case, right? This balanced state of being. The only way to do that was to engage in warfare, but out of the inception of light and peace. So even though warfare was engaged in, and he was extremely successful at this, he pushed the boundaries with the initial energy of love and light. Higher vibratory state, that was his truth, right? Versus in the World War II, a lower vibratory state, but also his truth.
Yeah.
And so the speech, right, when you have a motivational speech as a general and you motivate your men to go into battle, right? The motivational speech is not we're disenfranchised and we hate those people who disenfranchised us and we're going to go murder them, because that's the energy.
Right.
No. We are...
The speech is always a positive message.
The speech stems out of light and not hatred. Right. So when then you join larger ranks and you join larger armies and you take on more land and you expand further and further out, as that momentum progresses out, that momentum carries not hatred with it, but underlying current of love. I know it's difficult to say that there's a current of love in military action, right? But it is that. But it's coming out of truth of higher vibratory state.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean that sounds like what happens in the book as well, right? He's he has a very positive type of message that everybody can kind of rally behind. He's, A, through his genetics, and B, through his, um, what the spice does to him, right? He is of perhaps the highest consciousness of anybody in the universe as well. Yeah. I've actively avoided trying to look up why couldn't Paul stop the jihad and stuff as I was reading the book, because I just didn't want any spoilers, but I'm gonna have to at this point.
I mean, for all I know, later in the books he does. I don't know. Does he?
Well,
Right. So this is what's interesting, right? So if he's of a higher vibratory state, and I don't know, of course, this is a human being writing a book and interpreting of what it means to be in a high vibratory state. I don't know how much LSD or mushrooms he did in order to feel high vibratory state. I'm sure he had to in order to even write this book. Right. But when you see the high vibratory state, you see everything as energy. Do you know what I mean? At this point, it is blatantly obvious that each human being has this huge amount of energy around them. And then their reality of truth is the vibratory result of that energy. And then thus their intent comes out of that energy, right? Blindly so, subconsciously or consciously, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
There's extreme amount of power. Each one of us is this ginormous power bank that has this huge amount of potentiality and flow. And, most of the time it's wasted and, thrown out to useless things that we call everyday life or whatever, right? But sometimes that is channeled in the most productive way towards a goal.
Right.
And sometimes that goal is Nazi Germany. And sometimes that goal is, I don't know, gardening, whatever, right? But that is the case of each one of us, right?
Yeah,
Each human being is a potentiality of that flow. So if you're a higher ascended being and you see the reality as an outcome, conceptually, you have to realize that you need to change the vibratory state that started that process. Right.
Right. I mean that makes sense. I guess in the book it's just written that it was unavoidable.
No. It doesn't matter what the book says. I'm now talking about the reality of what we're facing, right?
Yeah.
The book is there as a stepway into this larger overarching path
Right.
of Earth.
Sure.
Or okay, Genghis Khan and Hitler and Stalin and all the other mass murderers of the world, right? How does that go? How does this inertia start? I mean, heck, A Man in a High Castle, right? Same thing, right? I know that was a continuation of Nazi Germany, but right?
No, that's what I was going to say, was that in that Man in the High Castle, the actual citizens of the Nazi Empire were quite well off. I'm sure they were quite happy to be in there. I mean, if you were of the master race in there, right? Whatever point I was trying to make earlier about how there are people who would be objectively better off individually underneath what is obviously a terrible regime, but they're portrayed in the the people, the vast majority of people under Man in the High Castle style Nazi Germany, Nazi Europe at that point were quite well off. The Jewish people certainly weren't, but the Aryan people were. So you could see why maybe individually they might prefer that. This is going back to what we were talking about earlier.
There's a very large caveat in the sense that once the momentum starts, and if you think your way is the way, right? But because your way is preserving your status quo of safety, right? Just like any movement, you can very obviously get lost in the fanatical expression of it and very soon lose your way in like, oh no, this is no longer a good thing. This is right. This is no longer.
Right. I mean, that was, I think, the goal from the high command in Man in the High Castle was, okay, we've got some sort of, agreement with the Japanese, but it's basically, there's the Nazis and there's the Japanese, and they own all of Earth at this point, half and half, or it's more than half. Nazis have more than half. The Nazis have better technology, better weapons, atomic weapons. They have, they're clearly the stronger power. And I think the goal is, we just have a couple more countries and a couple more races of people, and if we can just wipe those out, then life will be perfect for us Aryans. Won't that be grand? And I think that is the goal. It might even be explicitly stated. That is the goal. Let's get rid of all these people that we don't want anymore. And all that's left is us, the master race. Life's great. And
any idea, right? Like that's the thing is any idea starts with that. It starts with innocent, like, oh, look, if we have the same morals, if we have the same outlooks on life, if we have same ideas about what's good, what's bad, even if it's actually good, let's say like, oh, we don't kill people and we spread love and light and we like treat Earth in a specific way.
It comes into an us versus them.
It becomes an us versus them, right?
No, and when you have a big, powerful us and you have a them that is, you can see an easy way to defeat or destroy or enslave or kill off or whatever. It's like, this is achievable. And, life will be much, much better for us and they'll be dead. So it won't really matter. So maybe this isn't such a bad idea after all. And so, I can see how it happens. I can see how, you start off with little steps and at the end, you're gassing people by the millions. It's hard to go from here to there, but if you keep inching your way along, it's like, okay, well, yeah. And each step is more awful than the previous one, obviously. But when it's, this is only 5% worse, 5% worse. At the end of the day, you're gassing people by the millions. It's wild.
Because the initial inception comes out of lesser than standpoint where it's us versus them.
Yeah.
Right.
It all comes out of us versus them. The Dune Jihad is clearly an us versus them. I don't fully understand it, but it is an us versus them.
Yeah.
The Crusades was an us versus them. The Crusades was a literal jihad of the Christians against the Muslims done under the name of Jesus. Right? So you can see how fanatical stuff happens under the name of someone who may even have, who had a good message to begin with. Jesus didn't happen to be alive in that example. Paul is still alive in this example. Does that change much? I don't know. If Jesus was alive, do you think he could have stopped the Crusades? If Jesus is like, hey, no, let's not go kill people. That's not what we do. Would that have stopped people fanatical enough to I don't know.
It's interesting. Like I was thinking, okay, if Jesus was alive, could Jesus stop people from killing people? It's
killing people in his name.
Yeah. No, I know. Think about this. People were they were manipulated into this, obviously.
Yeah.
But they were manipulated with him as the leader, which in this case, Atreides is alive. So he has a voice, right? So people are saying, no, because we are in charge of the Bible and we're in charge of interpretation, this is Jesus's word. So you have to take my word for the truth.
Mhm.
And if your word is corrupt, right,
Yeah,
and seeking power,
you can spin it.
and you're spinning it as us versus them, and this is what Jesus would have wanted. So in that case, the Messiah is no longer there, and you are using the greater message of love and light, which is what Jesus' message is, right? Like the vibratory frequency is that.
Mhm.
But you're embedding your message of corruption into the message of love and light, and you're taking over people's sovereignty through that channel. So they're using the channel of love and light to get to touch an individual soul, and then they're corrupting them through, they're inserting programming of lesser than and the call to action through the corruption of the love and light message.
Yeah. I mean, that's what makes it infectious. I mean, there is some degree of, I'm the emperor and I say go, you've got to go, I guess. It's not that every Christian going on the crusade was a radical fanatic, bloodthirsty to kill some Muslims. I don't think that was it. I'm sure there were people who were like, oh, really? I have to march to the Holy Land? Are you serious? But hiding it inside of the package of love and light is the sneaky part, the infectious part, if anything. I don't know how that parallels to Dune. It just doesn't talk about it.
Google it. I mean, that might ruin a couple of books for you, unless you don't want to ruin the couple of books for you. The only way, right? Like, this is interesting. The only way you can take the frequency of love and light and corrupt it and basically abuse it, and then thus channel its power into, what I would perceive as net negative, is if the soul is corruptible. Were you not listening to anything I said?
No, I was
Okay,
reading.
go ahead.
Okay. He believes it is both inevitable and necessary to achieve his long-term goals for humanity. While he recognizes the devastating consequences of the jihad, he also foresees it as a means to dismantle the corrupt Landsraad system and ultimately save humanity from a greater, even more devastating fate.
Which is what?
He believes that even if he personally tried to prevent it, the Fremen would still carry it out, possibly with even greater ferocity. It's the lesser of two evils, basically. I don't know. I didn't get that from the books.
Well, I mean, in the Dune, the battle of the Arrakis, right, is against the
Harkonnens.
The what?
Harkonnens.
Yeah, the Harkonnens. Harkonnens want to take over the world, and then the entire movie perceives them as dark, and they live in some sort of dark juice, and but like their essence is dark essence.
Yeah, this I did look up is what there's a whole thing that apparently was lost on me when I read the book too, about how that whole thing came to be. How the Atreides got Arrakis to begin with, and it was all a setup. The whole thing was a big setup.
No, but regardless of how they got it, the parallels to the Fremen, right? Is that what it's called? Fighting the Harkonnen, right? Is they are darkness, right? Like metaphorically, they represent darkness. They represent evil.
Yes.
And Atreides, and I guess in his group, technically want to spread light, but in this case, light through we have to fight the darkness.
Yes.
So not dissimilar to the general's approach of like, if we don't go and collapse the energy of the dark will come at us.
Yeah.
Lesser of two evils is that.
Yeah.
If I don't do something, then that something takes over.
Yeah.
And so yes, we are raging, we're killing, and we're advancing, and but they believe that they're light.
They believe that they're light. I mean, I think
I guess
almost
as a general, I believe that I was light.
I think most people who are fighting for a cause believe that they're doing the right thing. Not universally. There are plenty of people who are like, I knew it was wrong, but I did it anyway because I was afraid to say something. There are those examples. The Nuremberg trials, right? Had that come out for the Nazis who, why did you do it? Well, I knew it was wrong, especially at the beginning, but everyone else was doing it, and I didn't want to. If I say no, I'm afraid they'd stick me in the gas chamber too. But I do believe that most people who are fighting for it, they were doing it because they kind of had to. But people who are actually fighting for a cause believe the cause is right. Otherwise, you're not going to fight for it. Nobody's fighting for a cause that they actively believe is wrong. They may be participating in it.
Well, there's this difference, right? And this is maybe where the only solution exists is.
But right can mean different things. There's like morally right, and then there's this is right for me, or right for my tribe, or right for my people, right?
Yeah.
Objectively, it is good for our house for me to go rob all of our neighbors, right? We'll have more money. But morally, that's wrong at the very base level. Too, there are probably consequences to that. So what is best for me, or best for my little group, or best for my whatever, is not necessarily the best thing to do. The Harkonnens are just trying to get power, is how it seems.
Okay, so so I think this is where I'm not sure if the goal for us is to find a solution, maybe just discuss the topics of possible lessening the
make it less bad.
Yeah, making it less bad. But like, there you go. Maybe this is the way to explore it. If you enter into high resonance of being, like you can go into that state, right? Higher resonance of being, and you connect to the whatever energy you want to call that has an open channel of being, right? Like where interpretation exists, where essence is seen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're on spice, right? Within that interpretation, it is very clear that all action leads to experiential interpretation of reality, but inevitably are one with the light, right?
Okay.
Like you could see the overarching thing is everything is of light, and everything chugs its way towards light, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes not pretty way, sometimes pretty way, but right, like there's this generalized pattern towards awareness and towards light.
Right.
At least right now, it feels that way.
No, I mean, I guess there are things that's like, how could that have been towards light? But I believe that, I don't know if it's kind of like a,
Yeah, I don't know. But
I don't know.
What I'm saying is right now, if I had to tune into the greater knowing, everything moves itself towards light. And so this is not a way to control it, but it is a way to understand the responsibility behind it, which is different. So if you recognize your personal responsibility to engage in any action, and then you realize your own personal source, right? Like your own power. Like if you're like a what is that thing that jump starts a battery?
Jumper cable?
Yeah. Well, it's the jumper cable that connects it, but like what is the box that
jump starter?
Sure. Like the thing that jump starts the battery, right? the frame, like your frame rate at which you function is what is it that you choose to jump start, right? Like if the battery is
You are the battery. What are you going to hook it up to? You're not the battery. You're the jump starter machine. And you've got your terminals.
prongers. Yeah.
What are you trying? Terminal wires, clamps. What are you trying to hook it up to?
What are you trying to jump start?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That I don't know if you can feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So every frame is your choice. And what are you jump starting with these cables? Right.
Okay. Yeah.
That quite literally, that is how each human being system works.
I mean, frame to frame, second to second.
Yeah.
What are you jump starting? Is it? I hate to use the word good or bad, but
whatever.
Yeah.
Right. But like
you're constantly making decisions, and it could be at the level of what where's your attention being spent? What is your attention being spent on? Is it again good or bad? Is it?
But there's attention. So this is the separation. There's a material interpretation of physicality that when we started talking about optics, right?
Mhm.
There's the material representation, like, oh no, then those cables could be quite literally something that we interpret in material form. Like, right? Like, oh look, I'm gonna go and work on I don't know, some sort of new energy source that I don't know provides free electricity to people, right? Like that is a physical expression of you, and you're jump starting a physical interpretation of you, and then you're offering a service or a product or whatever, and you're jump starting it, right? So there's a physical interpretation, but the truth is there's an energetic resonance of why within the physicality. So the optics not only includes the physical interpretation, but it includes the why, right? So, right, like if you're engaging in war conflict, there's like, oh, look, they're sending tanks over to cross into Sumi, and the Sumi is being bombed, right? But then there's the why, and an energetic why, right? So it's difficult not to say Sumi just because it's difficult not to think about what will be left. Right. But the energetic intent behind the why carries a huge morphic resonance that you are choosing to propagate, being a vehicle of that jump, right? If you're engaging in blind action because the powers above and the powers above and the powers above and powers above are feeding this message in, and you're not declaring sovereignty in your action, then you're just morphically resonating out. Okay, yeah, I'm the driver of the tank. The driver of the tank. I think it's more like this, right? It's more like a joystick, right? Or no, it's
you probably have it's probably like one of those like lawnmowers. I imagine you have like right and left tread controls.
That was how the olden days used to be, but is it still that way?
I probably know it's just some sort of computer screen. I don't know.
Okay.
Whatever. I don't think I've ever been in a tank.
I've been. Oh, really? You've never been inside a tank?
We went to a tank thing in high school. Both of us seemed to have physics teachers who were tank commanders.
Chemistry.
Oh, mine was a physics guy.
So if you were at the, right, if you're a tank operator, or tank driver, or the gun operator, or whatever you are the representation of the cumulative force, cumulative energy that travels down that you choose to declare or surrender your sovereignty into. That as a personal power bank, you're jump starting the same intent as the command.
Right. You're an expression of it.
You're an expression. And so if you're part of this chain, right, choosing sovereignty and deciding what resonates with you is a very simple move into like, oh, I'm not resonating into this. And so I will not propagate this resonance out. And however many people out you that were under your command then would then basically be, they would choose to like listen to a person above you, or they would choose to like, oh no, guess what? That kind of like declaring sovereignty into your space sounds good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to also declare sovereignty. Do you want to, right? So like,
it's just in the military, that's trickier because you go straight to prison for disobeying orders.
But there's a choice.
Yeah.
There's a choice into what it means for you to be sovereign and declare your sovereignty into energy of what.
And
in the military, you go to prison, but the goal of military is for you to be brainwashed and not have sovereignty. The whole point of the initial military training is to beat out sovereignty out of you.
It's this weird combination of you need to follow your orders always, always, always. At the same time, don't do anything illegal because you'll get in trouble for that.
No, it's to beat out sovereignty.
but weighing those two is tricky.
Well, no, but
yes,
when you beat out sovereignty,
you do want to beat out sovereignty because when the commander says, "Go take that hill," and and he knows half of you are about to die, he doesn't want questions. He wants you to go take that hill.
Yeah,
that's how you get an effective army. I get it. It's probably easier to do in the corporate world. Both of us have worked for companies that were a bit yucky. But
the goal of the company is to beat out sovereignty. The goal of the company
is the same thing, beat out sovereignty. You go, do this, you go do that, you go sell this, whatever.
Yeah.
And
and if there's moral questions,
we don't talk about that. Or we can justify it away for profits or shareholders or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know this discussion kind of goes on and on and on, but maybe at the end of it is each one of us has our own sovereign set of cables that we act as a frame initiators into the next cable or into the next frame, right? We're jump starting a frame. If that frame is not in alignment with our thought from like the frame before, then we can choose to jump start a different frame. Right. But if the frame is being operated out of unawareness or a pain body that is I'm in pain, I'm active, I'm being suppressed right now, and the way for me not to be suppressed is to take over this land, then the next frame will be actioning to take over this land so I don't feel suppressed.
Yeah.
Right? So our choices into our actions and the propagation of the future comes out of the choice into what we are jump starting into the next frame.
Yeah.
But so this is like my slight depression. It is quite literally the responsibility of each one of us to choose the frame that we are jump starting. And if we're manipulated from higher above through fear, through suppression, through this is the better way, and we're manipulating the message within itself, like, oh, if you do this, this is actually better, and we're not using our sovereign form of awareness to even judge whether or not we're being told is truth, then there's no way to stop the next frame. And the morphic resonance of the cumulative us that progresses the future forward, in the same way that Nazis progressed a very large future forward, would be the only way to seize the propagation of a future that we don't want would be to meet this future with a greater amount of resonance of what is actually better.
Yeah.
But better is not like there to suppress this group versus that group, right? Like it could be that. It could be like, oh, it's us versus them. And so our better is us winning here. And so therefore we need nuclear weapons, which is greater in equivalent amount of energy.
Right. Some sort of zero-sum situation where we can't both win in that example.
Well, no, in World War II, the Allies won, right? Because the nuclear weapon explosion was greater amount of the jump start, right? Like we took our intent, which was to stop the war, which is, like I guess most people would say is positive, right? But we said, but we don't have the number of people and we don't have the inertia to do that. So we're going to take the inertia that we're going to take our intent, let's say our positive intent to stop the war, and we're going to charge that intent into a machine or into a set of cables that can produce the explosion large enough to offset the inertia of the other side. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So in that case, we used an atomic weapon and charged it with the intent of stopping the war. And that produced the offset input for the inertia that started the war to begin with and propagated the war.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But in that case, it is a weapon of war against a weapon of war as number of people versus a weapon of war that was charged as number of people. Do you see what I mean? Like here, the difference.
There's the weapon, right? I mean,
so like both of them are equivalent. In fact, the nuclear weapons is bigger inertially wise, right? So what we did is, what Hitler had is he had X number of people that acted as jumper cables based on the loss of their sovereignty or coalition of their sovereignty with his message.
Sure.
And they became one cumulative weapon of war. And it held, like an amount of power, right? And that an amount of power, it either continued to multiply to some extent, but then, sooner or later started to lose some inertia.
Right.
But like it was chugging itself with a certain amount of inertia, right?
Right.
And then obviously that inertia sooner or later loses power based on motivation or alignment or questioning of sovereignty, or like, do I want to align with this? Well, I'm hungry. This doesn't seem to be working. Do you see what I mean? So he loses inertia and he gains inertia, but in the long run, right? Like it travels as its entity. It's morphic resonance.
Right.
And then we as allies, let's say we, between Ukraine and Russia and the United States and I don't know, whoever else, those are the countries that come to mind.
UK.
Sure. Right. Have maybe less people, maybe more people, but it takes us longer amount of time to gather the our weapon of war, right? And cumulative gather that amount of power that would offset the inertia of the cumulative effort.
United States wasn't in it until late. The Soviet Union wasn't in it until
late. Yeah.
So it was the Nazi machine versus one little country at a time, one little country at a time, one little country at a time. So it was easy to overpower.
To begin with, right? Because the inertia of that country did not match.
In fact, Austria is kind of, just it was. I don't even know that it was a violent annexation of Austria.
No, I think it was just like it's
okay. About the same.
Right. Yeah. So what I'm saying is he had momentum to build up the inertia that allowed him to have that much momentum to continue that huge of a takeover, because you're going, my gosh, from 41 to 45 when Ukraine was involved in it. Oh my gosh, total takeover of like Europe, right? Annihilation of Europe, destruction of complete Europe. Yeah. Total chaos. And I'm not even counting, right? Like what United States was doing in Japan. Like I don't know how much war actually came onto Japan other than the nuclear weapons. Yeah. So inertia versus inertia. And then we are programming our intent into something that is going to be basically larger, jumpstart, than the inertia of the Nazi Germany. So energetically, then the cumulative effect of morphic resonance offsets the war machine that is Nazi Germany with the war machine that is the ally intent of stopping the war.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And it's like it sucks that it leads to war. It sucks that it's, this army versus that army. And, whole bunch of people on both sides end up dying. That's not the ideal thing to me. But that explain it that way. That makes sense.
No, but if we continue to initiate action on an individual basis out of lack of awareness, right, of where we're surrendering our sovereignty, and if the message that we tune into is the message of aggression and war, then we are building a new war machine, of inertia of war, a new war machine that like how you multiply that amount of energy is ginormous, right? Like it just infinitely starts to multiply the second you start gathering or surrendering your sovereignty into ideas of war or warfare.
Yeah.
And if we don't understand that we're piping into the energy of warfare and we're surrendering our power and jump starting a system, then in the long run, we're not aware that we're jump starting. That's where it will go.
Right.
That is where it will go.
I think it boils down to an awareness of what you are doing, what you're participating in. And if the morphic resonance just makes it harder to be aware, if anything, because it's just you're just one of the other million people doing the same thing, and you don't even realize that what you're doing and why you're doing it. You've given up your sovereignty to the morphic resonance of whatever it happens to be. Might be good, might be bad, might be right, might be wrong. I don't know, but you should at least be aware of what it is, so that you're actively choosing what you're doing instead of blindly going along with whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, I mean, step one is choosing.
Yeah,
right? Step one is choosing. But there's this point in self where you have to recognize, and I don't know if we are here yet, but I'm hoping this is where we are, is that Earth has to recognize as long as there is energy of a war machine on this side, if we're in unawareness, there will be a war machine on this side, right? There will
balancing forces almost.
Yeah, so like any attention, any sovereignty surrendering into any ideas of a war machine on this side, and this is very important, on the micro scale and the macro scale.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the war is.
If there's a battle inside of you, there will be a battle outside of you.
Yeah. If there's any energy of a war that you're surrendering your jumper cables in, and you're like adding your jumper cables in, there will always be the other side that is somebody else's creation and propagation of a war machine.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like, it quite literally completely does not matter who's winning, who is losing, because no matter what, the world of a war machine is winning.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're the Allies or if you're the Nazi Germany. It is a war machine against a war machine.
Right.
And only raising your consciousness into the awareness of what you're plugging in your jumper cables will change the outcome of having a war machine.
It's like, you think, the naive approach is to think that, the Allies were the light and the Nazis were the dark. So the war existing in the first place was the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a place that exists in all of us where we can transcend the vibratory state that causes us to either be blind or be disenfranchised enough within our awareness to cause us to dive into, you don't have to believe in Jesus, but into corrupted versions of humanity. And I say corrupted, like, I don't mean it in a negative, way, but I mean like the versions of us that causes us to betray our own truth. Because once we are aligned, right, once you're in alignment with your higher self and you go into this objectified version of interpretation, you can see what is at the essence of you, where you yourself do not feel like you're corrupting your own being. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that exists in light. Like if you pipe in into your own truth, there's no need to surrender sovereignty or to fight or to feel disenfranchised or to feel like you need to raise arms against something. Because in your own truth, where you're not betraying your own self, you are in complete surrender of light. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so us diving into any aspect of our reality that causes us to betray our own self, to not either recognize or recognize self as lesser than, but that's just not recognizing ourselves, right? Then we would be splitting ourselves into efforts of jump-starting something that we don't actually in agreement with within ourselves. So the reason why I felt so disempowered, I guess, about this is because I realized there's no effort here that doesn't start with the individualized interpretation of this. And there's no outcome here that does not start with individual recognition of this. In fact, any propagation of the future of Earth, survival or not, happiness or not, existence or not, doesn't come into fruition until each human being is responsible for the jumper cables that they're offering into the world and seeing through that effort.
Yeah.
So as a leader, right, like I would summarize this up as a leader, either on Atreides style or any other Messiah that comes along, the responsibility is to teach that and that only.
Right.
Which is not material, right? And it is not a physical outflow of anything.
Right.
It's a responsibility of personal recognition.
It's not follow me. It's to a degree, it's think for yourself, but to a degree, it's know yourself. Probably that's the bigger thing, to know yourself. And only then can you think for yourself. And it's not.
But it's like, right, know yourself, right? But one, that is just the goal of every human being.
Yeah.
But as a leader, like let's say Atreides style, as a leader, if you are a Messiah and the world is surrendering towards you because you have been prophesied to come into the space and now you're having to fill this void that is searching for you, right? Then, chosen or not, agreeing or not, you're in the position where your responsibility is to teach how not to become part of the War Machine 1 or War Machine 2, recognizing that neither one of those spaces is going to lead anywhere other than more war.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And responsibility there is to see that your actions have consequences beyond interpretation of Earth, beyond interpretation of Arrakis, or beyond interpretation of Nazi Germany, or beyond interpretation of anything other than this huge experiential version of you betraying your own truth because you're not choosing to see the alignment of self that you're seeking. And that's the only solution to be brought to the table. And everything else is basically manipulation or
lack of sovereignty.
Well, lack of sovereignty, but lack to choose to see out of which space of action, out of which space of being you're choosing to build the next frame.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.